seated. Dear guests, dear KAIST students, dear KISA members and MSA members, dear everyone, we'd like to welcome you all on our second day of stress and anxiety management workshop. We talked about emotional intelligence yesterday, and we had a couple of questions left. Those will be answered today at the end of the workshop. Today we'll talk about emotional resilience. Yeah. And so I believe at the end we'll have Professor Mr. Park. He'll give the ending speech. And for those of you who haven't attended the workshop yesterday, I'll give you a brief introduction of our very distinguished speaker. Mr. Karmani is a director of Street UK Limited. This project working with young people at risk of violent offending. He is director of Diversity Project. It's a consultancy that offers research, training, and policy development, as well as support in relation to equality, diversity, human rights, and personal empowerment. He's a professional counselor with over 20 years of experience in the area of mental health issues. His prior work experience includes being a researcher and a lecturer in Leeds and Bradford universities, specializing in race and public policy. He was the head of race policy for Welsh Assembly Government. He was a board member of Joseph Rowntree's Charitable Trust, serving on their Racial Justice Committee, and he'll talk about himself more during his speech. So please welcome Mr. Karmani.
Thank you very much, and again it's good to be here with you this evening for the second lecture in this series. Today, yesterday we really explored. Now, I don't know if there's any people who have did everyone come yesterday? Yeah? Did most people? Okay, some of you didn't come yesterday, but I'll recap on some of the issues that we explored. And yesterday we had a very interesting discussion, and we had an interaction as well, a lot of interaction. Today I'm going to present a lot more information, because yesterday, we didn't get through as much as we wanted. And if I'm going through the information quite quickly, what I really want is to create more of a discussion in the question and answer session. So, please don't think that I'm not going to revisit this material. So if there's anything in one of the slides that you feel that you want to elaborate or discuss further, do address that question in the question and answer session. And if you feel you want to write that question down, please also write that question down. Okay, let's have a bit of a recap. So yesterday we looked at the fact that as human beings, we are social beings, and social beings, our emotional side is a very important side of us. That emotional side needs nurturing, it needs development, it needs to be healthy. We need to be emotionally healthy as well as physically healthy. And we find, interestingly, that when our physical health isn't so good, it affects our emotional health. When our emotional health isn't so good, it affects our physical health as well. And yesterday we had mentioned the concept around emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, therefore, is the ability to manage our emotions, to understand the way that we feel, manage them, regulate them, and also control them, and channel them in a way which is positive and constructive in our life. When we've got that skill, then that enables us to be, it's a very powerful skill to have. And I mentioned yesterday the difference between what I call cognitive intelligence, IQ. People can be highly intelligent in their own particular field, but sometimes they can really lack intelligence in terms of emotional understanding. And so therefore they perhaps lack social skills and relationship skills. Someone who's got very good emotional intelligence, generally you'll find that person is a very good person when it comes to relationships. because relationships require, again, that same process of nurturing and developing and encouraging positive emotional interaction between two people. So these are some of the issues that we spoke about yesterday, and we also said that, look, some of the biggest issues that we are confronted with globally are issues which are social, emotional issues. Conflict is a prime example of that. Conflict occurs because of emotion, not because of the reality. Reality is that two people, are not disposed towards conflict, but if someone feels that they want to be aggressive, or feels that they want, or perceive a greater level of aggression, they're more likely to, this is more likely to lead to conflict. And also, when we look at this subject of emotional intelligence, why is it so important? Because our emotions are so powerful. Emotions are so powerful, and you need to have the intelligence to control. And obviously, in terms of probably the most powerful emotion that you can possibly have, and that's why, it's interesting talking to people who are scientists, who concern themselves obviously with perhaps the rational world and logical thinking. And when I say that, Spock comes to mind, okay, for me. One of the most powerful emotions you can possibly have, because Spock tries to be someone who is emotionally repressed. And he feels by suppressing emotions, the Vulcans, they believe that they could create a better society if they didn't have emotion. But then, as we know, Captain Kirk, he did behave emotionally. And a lot of the youngsters here are thinking, what is he talking about? They don't recognize Star Trek. And the point I'm trying to make here is this: emotions are powerful, and probably the most powerful emotion you can get is love. I don't think there's anything more powerful than love as an emotion. And I'd love to ask scientists, can you quantify love for me? Can you explain the concept of love scientifically to me? And they probably could, in terms of a chemical reaction in the brain, serotonin and dopamine, and you can simulate it with MDMA, ecstasy drug, and you can get the love feeling going. Why I was talking about it is because I was talking to someone yesterday about, again, a particular challenge that individual had. And it was related to love, of course. As a counsellor, I've got to say, most of my counselling is related to love. It's related to people managing that emotion. And for this particular individual I was talking to, I said, is this your first love? And he said, this is your first love. Believe me, it's such a powerful thing. It completely distorts your view of reality. And so, these are what we're talking about. When I'm talking about emotional intelligence, I'm talking about very powerful things. What have people done for love? And the opposite of love is hate, which is also another powerful emotion, which creates another powerful emotion called fear, which leads to an action called aggression, often. So can you see how powerful emotions are? So emotional health has to be nurtured, has to be developed. Emotional health is about balance, and it's also about feeling confident, that we feel, if something happens, we feel, low, we're reading our emotions. I know when I'm feeling up, and I know when I'm feeling down. I know when I need to talk to someone. Yesterday we also, yesterday we also spoke about the importance of seeking help and breaking down the stigma that is associated with mental health problems. And we mentioned some cases around, obviously, self-harm and suicide, that individuals who are at risk of emotional problems, because of the cultural issues in a society where people don't talk about their emotions and don't talk about their feelings, they repress them. As a result of that repression, then, they suffer in silence. There are, so many people you'll find in their lives, they have major challenges in their lives. Okay, that they're not able to talk to anyone about that. As a result, they have that emotional damage. We also mentioned yesterday that emotional damage, interestingly, is transferred, like a virus, is transferred to the next generation. You find, you go on to have kids, if you have an emotional weakness yourselves, sometimes you transfer that virus onto others. That's again why emotional understanding and emotional balance is so important. Not everyone automatically has good or poor emotional health. It varies, it goes up and down. And it's part of the process is knowing what affects my emotional health. And so if I'm in a positive emotional place, again, these are practical little techniques you could take away in terms of your journal. Yesterday we mentioned about what I call emotional regulation. You know, checking yourself, taking an account of yourself in terms of your emotional disposition. So you could ask yourselves, you know, on a scale 1 to 5, am I in a positive emotional place today? So for example, what would describe that would be, you know, am I relaxed, happy, content, enjoying life, healthy relationships, a positive attitude and thinking? I feel I'm in control of my life. I feel like I am satisfied with the direction of my life. That would be a positive direction. I can ask myself, you know, whether, or am I in a negative emotional place? Very important that you are, again, looking at that. If I'm finding myself in a negative emotional place, upset, withdrawn, irritable, angry, quick-tempered, poor relationships, I find that, you know, I'm not getting what I want out of a relationship. I find that people in my life, they're not helping me in my life. They're not enriching me, not motivating me, but they're actually making me feel even more negative. Poor relationships, a negative cycle of thinking. I see the world purely in negative terms. I have a lack of control. I feel very pessimistic about the future. And I've got that negativity that kind of defines me. So you can see if you're in that negative emotional space. So very much it kind of follows this kind of sliding scale. So you could say many of us are in this positive place, but we can easily slip down. And this is what emotional intelligence is essentially about. It's about that regulation. If I see myself slipping, what do I do at this point here before I come to a point where I hit rock bottom? And this is where, you know, the key thing is, if I'm emotionally intelligent, then I'm able to identify other people who are slipping. When I identify other people who are slipping, I have that empathy, because part of emotional intelligence is about empathy for other people, having that feeling and concern for others, supporting others as well. And that support role we'll talk about is really in terms of befriending, assisting, guiding, etc., etc. And likewise, you know, when I see myself slipping, you know, I'll kind of seek help. And I'll be able to manage my emotions. So how can I be more emotionally healthy? So some things. Make time for yourself to relax and do things you enjoy. Again, this is not rocket science. You know, this is not something which, but again, these are sometimes when you are in an intensive environment where everything is your work related and you have a highly competitive work environment as well, where you're expected to achieve outcomes, objectives, targets, and if you don't achieve those targets, then obviously that has a serious impact on your success, then people become completely focused on work and isolate themselves from, you know, actually taking that time out for themselves. It's important that people have that downtime. And that downtime where people obviously just recharge themselves by doing something which gives them that energy and gives them that sense of purpose. And a lot of people sometimes sacrifice that downtime. You know, as a result of that, they become completely immersed and focused on their work. All they're seeing, imagine the only environment you're seeing is your campus, is your lab, nothing else. Okay, you need to get out of that kind of environment. Enjoy a healthy, balanced diet. Again, not rocket science, but the food that we eat also has an emotional impact on ourselves. And again, this is different, varies differently from the Western culture where I come from to Eastern cultures. People have different attitudes towards food. But again, you know, you've probably heard the statement, "You are what you eat." And you know, so for example, if you are eating highly processed food with high sugar content, of course this has an emotional impact. It actually drains your energy. What you're doing is that you are actually, you know, causing your body to have a massive kind of blood sugar kind of, you know, peak in terms of blood sugar that affects your emotional state. You might not know why, you know, I'm feeling so hyper, and then you have a